if you have such an ideology, you're basically stating that whatever decision that you choose to make as a woman, whether inherently smart or dumb, provided that it was made by you who is a woman, is particularly empowering. Which sounds absolutely wild because it's almost like saying that
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breaktime Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He's also a man who does include running his mouth to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here because the sexes seem to be battling and I am taking the men's side. I've got a woman that is busy yelling patriarchy is everything bad, and I've got another one that is making older men seem bad. And you know what? Considering that I'm a man and I'm not really a part of the patriarchy because I don't know what the hell that is, I am going to defend the men on this one. Like, I'm definitely gonna be on the guy's side just because there's a lot of BS that's being spewed out here and someone needs to set the record straight. And normally people don't get to speak up for men all that much, and the ones who do seem to do a bit of a shit job sometimes online. And that is where I come in. So I intend on clarifying on a couple of things in matters age as well as sex. And I intend on getting into the sex part not too long from here. But before I can say any more, first off, if you are listening and you are enjoying what it is that you're listening to, I hope that you do give it a nice rating on whatever app you're on. And should you agree with me, should you disagree with me, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic and or guest I should have on the podcast, then the DMs are always open. The social media links are usually in the description. And if you feel like that's too much work to find, just going and clicking the link, just saying, then you can obviously listen all the way till the end of the episode. And normally I will usually mention the social media there, so whichever option you take, provided you get to DM me, I will handle your DMs accordingly. But with that said, I do hope that you enjoy what it is that you're listening to and you listen all the way till the end. Now, with that said, I want to kick things off by talking about the patriarchy. Normally, whenever I talk about the patriarchy, actually, hold up, I don't usually talk about the patriarchy. I talk about people who talk about the patriarchy. So whenever I'm talking about people who talk about the patriarchy, I usually like to question the thought process in a lot of the things they say, because oftentimes they use the patriarchy, whatever that is, to basically throw whatever hate, blame, or just misgivings they experience, more so as women, to this supposed deity of men, or this supposed group of men that seem to have decided how the world should work in a way that favors them. And honestly, while I have had my differences with a lot of these people, normally I tend to think that, maybe at some point they'll understand that sometimes this is beyond just something that is done by men. But unfortunately, we tend to have situations like this. So not too long ago, while I was on TikTok, I stumbled across one of the content creators that I've covered on this podcast before, called Natasha, who was busy talking about how hookup culture and purity culture are both patriarchal. And she decided to reference the whole story of the voice memo guy. Now, for those of y'all that don't know who or what the voice memo guy is, it was this trending voice clip of a guy basically asking if they can have sex on the second date. And I handled it in the previous episode. So episode 698, go listen to the rant. It has that voice memo clip. So this lady was basically talking about it and basically trying to elaborate how hookup culture and purity culture are both patriarchal, which is something that I found to be particularly odd. But before I can give my thoughts on it, let me just let the clip play, then I can give my 2 cents on this. So without further ado...
Hey guys, today I'm going to defend a choice feminist principle. Today I'm going to actually tag in my choice feminists for this discussion because it's getting ridiculous. I want to talk about the purity versus hookup culture thing, okay? Because my best friend and I, we've been talking about it and we think it's absolute madness. Especially with this voice memo guy, like things are happening and they're crazy. In the pursuit to dismantle purity culture, we find that what we're observing is that people now want to make women's bodies supposedly very available for men. What are we doing? Genuinely, what are we doing? When it comes to relationship dynamics, sexual relations, with men specifically, this is where choice feminism should reign. This is where women should be able to have their own terms in how they want to engage with the misogynistic, patriarchal men of this world. I don't understand why we're all living in la la land as if men don't harm women. You're going to be in a very vulnerable position when you're with a man. So if women have requirements, if they want you to take them out on dates, if they want a relationship, sorry, that's what my girls are going to get. Let me tell you, one of the main reasons that I'm not going to sit here and love hookup culture is just because men love it. I'm one of those people wherever my girls are at, I am with my girls. I am going to stand there with women and I'm going to defend what they want. It should be totally fine to have different conditions different conditions for engaging in any type of dynamic with men. If you want something that's different than mine, none of us are wrong. The way people are calling each other prudes, or this is literally no one should be shamed for any of their preferences when it comes to relations with men. I don't understand why that would ever be the case, especially considering the patriarchal and misogynistic situation that we find ourselves in right now. That's the thing. Why can we empathize with women? That women actually do want to be treated like human beings. What's so wrong with women wanting romantic relationships or wanting to be just treated like a person, even in casual situations? No, even if they want respect while they're going into casual things, I am going to support that. This whole thing is ridiculous. It's becoming insane. Sorry. Purity culture and hookup culture they are extremes. A feminist world would have a balance where people are able to freely choose how they want to engage with each other, considering, listen to this one, considering the conditions are favorable, that there is no patriarchy. You need to understand that when there is patriarchy, then all things must be considered. And if women are saying, personally, I want a guy to respect me, I want this to happen, I want to be treated like a human being, even in casual things, I want romantic relationships where I'm treated as an equal, they're going to get that, and that's what we're going to strive for. Sorry, I don't understand why we're losing the plot and making it seem like men don't use women for their bodies. Women wanting to actually be valued in their humanity is such a wrong and disgusting and old-fashioned thing. Let's be serious, please.
Okay. That was a particularly long clip. I hadn't really thought about it, but it's gone on for a little over 3 minutes, which is wild. Normally I don't have such long clips, so my apologies on that. But that aside, I listened to this entire thing, and I think the only thing that I can agree with her on, straight off the bat in terms of every single word that she said, is the statement where she said that there's nothing wrong with having different opinions on how you choose to engage in relationship stuff. That one I'm we're on the same page on that one. But everything else that she was saying in and around that, I was listening and I was like, how is it that someone can say so much but nothing at the same time? Because, first of all, let's start by looking into this thing that she refers to as choice feminism. Now, a very quick check through Gemini on what choice feminism is will tell you that choice feminism is a branch of popular feminist thought that argues every individual choice made by a woman is inherently empowering and feminist as long as she freely chooses it herself. Which sounds like a particularly wild thing, because if you have such an ideology, you're basically stating that whatever decision that you choose to make as a woman, whether inherently smart or dumb, provided that it was made by you who is a woman, is particularly empowering. Which sounds absolutely wild, because it's almost like saying that regardless of whether you can parallel park or you end up ramming a tree at about 160 kph, either way you're a good driver. Which I don't know about you, but that sounds like absolute bullshit. But with that said, it's not like I was trying to discuss choice feminism with this clip. Now, she was basically talking about how apparently, people are disagreeing and hookup culture and purity culture and whatever culture they have and how it's not feminist. Like, every single thing that she was saying, I kid you the hell not, falls into one of two categories. Either she's saying stuff that we already agree with as particularly sensible people, or she's basically contradicting herself. And this is something that you hear quite a bit when you listen to the entire clip, because she's busy talking about how as feminists we should be able to have the opportunity to choose for ourselves, or with all of these systems, blah blah blah, a woman should have the right to choose for herself. And the truth of the matter is, it's not like anyone said that the woman shouldn't have had a right to choose. If you listen to that voice memo, of which if you do want to listen to it, I did play it in the previous episode. You can just go and just listen to it real quick, then come back. If you actually listen to that clip, then you realize that if anything, this guy gave her the choice to decide if she wants a second date, because he would like the second date to involve some level of intimacy, or to just cut it short, sex. So when you think about it, he did give her the choice. She did have the choice to say yes or no to the second date. So it's not like this entire premise is all that useful. So everything about, oh, I'm a girl's girl, if a woman wants to be treated nicely in whatever casual situation or romantic one, then I'm with her. Like, shorty, no one said that there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing in the voice memo that brought out that, so I find it particularly odd that would be a point for you. But the part that actually did interest me quite a bit is how she was busy talking about how apparently, men who are patriarchal and misogynistic, because she loves using those terms, weren't respectful and they want to use women for their bodies and shit, and apparently it's wrong. And she tries to tie in the fact that hookup culture is inherently patriarchal because guys want that. And the thing is, like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but maybe she needs to refresh her history. But if anything, hookup culture is anything but patriarchal for the people that believe in the patriarchy. Because when you think about it, if there was a so-called patriarchy that did create a purity culture, then if anything, it probably did protect people from hookup culture to some degree. Yes, fine, maybe it might not have been as advantageous for a lot of women because, like choice and everything, but for the most part, it did prevent hookup culture. So now, feminism comes through like, alright, fine, it's your body, you do what the hell you want with it. Alongside that, the pillow's also there. So babes decide to go and screw around. So if guys look at it and they're like, shit, I want to get some too, suddenly it's a bad thing? Like, that's weird. That is actually weird. And then now you take that and you're like, it's part of the patriarchy. How is that the patriarchy? If anything, that is anti-patriarchy, because there's nothing about the patriarchy that's like we need to have access to women's bodies whenever and if ever we want. If anything, we've given you the choice to decide if you want to let us smash or not. So if anything, this is inherently feminist. And as such, because you who believes that you are a feminist, feminism is based off of equality, believes that a woman should be able to dictate the standards at which she would want to be met whenever it comes to dating, then I, as a man, should also believe in the same equality of choice, whereby I can also dictate the standards to which I can state that I would like to have sex on the second date. Because at the end of the day, it is about choice, and I should have the freedom of expression to at least express my choices. To put it simply, I will use a quote from a prisoner back in the Boondock series and say, it may not be my God-given right to white bitches, but it is my God-given right to ask for white bitches. With that said, I am going to leave it at that because I believe this lady still has a bit of growing to do, and move it on to our main topic of this episode. And this one is on the age factor, because sometimes people just like talking about age, and in this case, someone's talking about older men. Now, a lady just so happened to hop onto Reddit not too long ago to talk about her experience dating older men and to discourage women from dating older men if they are particularly young. Now, I do want to read this post and get into my thoughts on it because I do find some of these posts to be particularly amusing, and I would like to hear some of the thoughts that some of the people who commented said before I give my own, because I feel like there is something to be discussed here. It's just most people may not necessarily want to have this discussion. So the post reads, and I quote, "I was just sitting here, then I remembered when I was dating a 40-year-old and I was 20, and he kept telling me how he's rejecting advances from very beautiful women because he has me, the most beautiful woman. You'd think maturity comes with age. My advice, avoid older men because as soon as you get involved with them, you find out why they're single." End quote. And this is a particularly interesting post because honestly, like even before I get into my thoughts on it, and I was just reading this right now and it just clicked in my mind, I don't see anything wrong with him saying that he's been rejecting advances from beautiful women because he's with a very beautiful woman or the most beautiful woman. Like, I find nothing wrong with it. Maybe it's because I'm a guy, maybe. But anyways, before I can get into my thoughts on it, let me just hop into the comments and I can talk about those in a bit. So the very first comment says, and I quote, "This goes both ways, honestly. A young person expects an older person to behave a certain way, and an older person expects a younger person to behave a certain way. The gap between reality and expectation is very wide and disappointments kick in. Each is better off with people within a certain age range, and the range is wider the older you get." End quote. And this is very true, except for that last part, because I find that that's a little bit questionable. So yes, a young person will expect a lot more from an older person because the belief is that an older person is a more mature person, probably a wiser person, and an older person is going to expect that a young person can probably mature a little bit faster, or might be a little bit more useful, or may be able to provide something that they want that, they believe that young people should be having. Why are you as a young person stressed out? You're not paying bills, you're not taking care of kids, you don't have a family that you need to support. So it's very likely that, one side might assume that the other isn't really doing as much as they should be doing, or probably doesn't see things the right way. And they might have their own preconceived biases, and that can make things a little bit tough. Anyways, let me leave it at that and move on to the next comment, which says, and I quote, "Harry, an immature young man than an old fool. I usually look at it sometimes and I'm usually surprised. Like, old man, with that age of yours, you have no brains, you have no morals. Like, that's why they can't lure any woman who has a good head on their shoulders. Some think they're going to get revenge for their youth, broke, ugly, and etc. Stone me, but I've heard this from some of those guys." End quote. Alright, so honestly, I can't say that there's anything wrong that's been said in this one. Like, the first bit where they're like, it's better to have an immature man than an old fool. That one I feel is the one that I'd probably argue is subjective. But yes, old people can also be stupid. It's not like stupidity usually reduces with age. Sometimes it even increases. But for some of these guys getting revenge for their youth, them being broke, them being ugly and so on, yes, there are some guys that will choose to think like this, that will choose to, kind of function from this sort of mindset. And they are out here in these streets. A lot of guys in like their 30s, maybe all the way to like 35, hell, maybe even some in their 40s, will be doing that with a lot of these young babes because now they have the money that these women like. They have some of the things that these women might actually want in a guy. They have the experience and, they are the hot shit at that moment. So, of course, they're going to take advantage. It's kind of like if you grew up wanting shoes, but your parents never bought you the kind of shoes that you wanted because of, like, say, money issues, and then suddenly you come into some money. Best believe you're going to get every single variation of that pair of shoes because you love it so much and you have the money to do it. So, if anything, I can kind of understand those guys, but then again, maybe it's just because it's me and I'm a guy. But anyways, on to the next comment, which says, and I quote, "Older women too. you'll quickly find out why they've never married or have twice divorced. End quote. And this is true to a degree. And I say this very well because there's a lot of people, and I'll say this about millennials of right now, they aren't in relationships because they just didn't get into the dating market when they were much younger, or they probably didn't participate as much, so it just became hard for them to nail someone down. Now, of course, the older people get, the more specific they are with what it is they want, and this is something that I've noticed the older I've gotten. And I've also noticed this a lot with women whenever they clock, like, the later stages of their 20s and their 30s and so on. Like, they are more specific about what they want. And if you as a guy don't manage to meet a certain criteria, you get booted a lot faster. And that criteria gets more strict the older they get, up until they get to a point where maybe they'll feel a bit desperate and loosen up on a bunch of them. But for the most part, that is something that does tend to happen. But with that said, let me leave it at that and move it on to my last comment. Then I can give it my thoughts on it. So the last one says, and I quote, "I used to be on a moral high horse, but now that I'm older, even for me, dating a 20-year-old at 40 is on my bucket list." End quote. And okay, I do still feel like that age gap is particularly huge. Like, when you were turning 20, there was 0. Like, just think that through for a bit. Or like, when you were busy enjoying your teens, they were busy doing spelling bees, which is wild. Or basically just learning math. But anyways, let me not try to think of that as much. Now, are there guys that feel like this? This is very true. Do I think that it is particularly wrong to move to this kind of mindset? Not entirely. I do think that sometimes you might feel one way about something, then as you grow older, you look at it again and you're like, maybe it's not such a bad idea. Now, should you as a 40-year-old date a 20-year-old? I think that's entirely up to you and the 20-year-old. But I do feel like that age gap might be particularly huge. Like, that's the typical, you're about as old as my daughter type shit that I would not really be all that comfortable with. But maybe it's because I'm not 40 years old. Maybe. But anyways, with that said, let me move on to my thoughts on this, because I do have a few. So first off, I'm finding it funny how, like, this isn't the first time that I've seen it, but oftentimes you find that women who used to date older men usually get older and then they start saying that it's not a good idea to date older men. Now, I'm not saying that it's a good idea or a bad idea. It's just I usually find it weird whenever women do that, because they're like, oh, it's so bad that this guy who is like 36 is trying to date a 21-year-old. Yet when you were 21, you were dating guys that were like 36, 37 years old. And yes, they'll always come back and be like, oh, I didn't know better. And I'm like, I bet there were older women that were telling you that this is a bad idea, but you are out here busy trying to enjoy yourself and live life la vida loca. So maybe give better guidelines as far as like, okay, if you're gonna date someone that's, X much younger or like this age and you're so much older or younger, then maybe you should do ABCD. Like, I feel like that is probably a hell of a lot better than saying don't date older guys and yet you used to date older guys. But then again, that's just me. Also, I feel like people make it seem as though whenever a guy is much older and he's single, there's usually a problem. Personally, I don't think that's always the case. There are a couple of reasons why older men can be single, I believe. And I feel like not all of them have to do with them having some sort of issue or how they behave. So let me think about it. So reasons why older men could be single. First of all, maybe he just didn't find someone while he was young. And this is something that happens to a lot of guys, by the way. You find that a guy was probably trying to date, or maybe he didn't have too much success in dating when he was in his 20s, and probably decided to just, stay on the grind. And he decided to just work. And he didn't get too much time dating, or he didn't manage to get a babe that wanted to secure him while he was still young. And the guy just grows older and older. And all that he's hearing is, you should probably settle down, you should probably get a babe. And then at some point, all of a sudden, he's like, oh shit, I'm in my 30s, or I'm 30, or I'm in my 40s. I should probably settle down. Like, a lot of times you tend to hear guys that kind of do get to that situation, and sometimes it's circumstantial, other times it's by choice, but it is one of the more popular reasons, if not the most popular reasons, why some older men or most older men are single. Then the other reason, although I do feel like this one probably might take the popularity cake, if not share it alongside the earlier reason, is the fact that they are most likely divorced or separated. Now, a lot of these guys are probably trying to reacclimatize themselves with the dating market and how dating is over the years that they probably left the dating market and were married. And they're back out here in these streets. Now, are we supposed to turn them away because they are divorced or separated? No. They are technically just as single as the rest of us that aren't married or divorced. Then the other reason, which is the one that a lot of women like running to, is that they have issues. So it could be commitment issues, it could be drug related issues, it could be issues in terms of mindset, it could be issues in terms of how they treat women, and those issues could contribute to that. Now, this is probably the main negative one that people like to run to, yet the truth of it is there's two other reasons that aren't particularly negative, but it's not like they're the most positive ones. Otherwise, some of these older men wouldn't be so single. But with that said, should you really date them? I think that's entirely up to you, regardless of gender and what your sexuality is. If you're interested in the person, then, provided you're above the age of 18 and they're above the age of 18, technically you could say that it's entirely on the two of you to decide if you want to date or not. Now, of course, there is that moral line that goes after legality, which I just mentioned earlier. So that moral line should be something that you decide on your own if you're willing to go higher up or lower down. So if you're a 40-year-old guy and you're like, I don't mind dating the 20-year-old babe, then cool, that's a you thing. If you do mind it, then of course you can date older. I'm not gonna say date younger, but yeah, you can date older and see if that's your thing. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna be out here busy saying, oh, you know what, I've dated older women or I've dated younger women, and then I'll tell you not to date either one. I'll probably give you pointers on what to avoid or what to watch out for, but I won't tell you to not date them. Because at the end of the day, it's not like I can say that my experiences are going to be the same as everyone else's. I can't tell you that, the older babe that, let's say, I dated is, a reflection of how good or bad it is to date older women. Or, even though you try to use younger women in that situation, it's not like it would change it a hell of a lot. So, for the most part, it's entirely up to you. But with that said, let me just conclude by saying that wisdom is gained through growth, not through age. So don't mistake the two and think bagging an older dude means that he's more mature. Even fools grow old, so if anything, you should at least learn that there are quite a number of immature older men that are there. Otherwise, if you don't think that through, you'll just be exchanging young dick for old dick, but with the same exact mindset. But with that said, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, maybe I have zero understanding, maybe I am promoting something that I probably aren't. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagak and on Bluesky, it is at the BreaktimePod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.